Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Linux and Open Source News Show. This week we've got AMD both winning at open source again by opening the entire source code, dataset, training parameters, everything related to one of their AI models, which makes it one of the very rare, fully open AI models out there. But on the other hand, they don't really win on their latest GPUs because while they seem to be a good bang for buck solution on Windows, on Linux it's not all there yet. We've got GNOME finally adding a lot of stuff in GNOME 48 to have better Wayland support, including global shortcuts, the cursor shape protocol, color management, and other things. And we've got a lot of other stuff to talk about, including the segue to our sponsor. This video is sponsored by SquareSpace, your all-in-one platform to create, manage, and publish your own website. Squarespace has really easy tools to make sure anyone can end up with a nice-looking, well-optimized website, no matter if they know how to code or not. They have what they call their blueprint system, which lets you pick from a variety of templates that are pre-built and will suit any type of website, whether it's a simple blog, an online store, a video platform, whatever. On top of that, to go further, Squarespace has their own design engine to create your own pages. You can just drag and drop elements where you want them, and you can change the colors, the fonts, and just tweak the template however you want. And once you have something you like, you can add extra features like creating your own online shop, complete with a payment system that handles credit cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, and more. So check out squarespace.com/thelinuxexperiment, the link is in the description, so you can give Squarespace a shot, and you'll also get 10% off your first website or domain name purchase. Okay, so let's get started. First, AMD seems to keep winning at the open source game because they just opened up their Instella AI model, and I truly mean opened up, as in the entire model is open, all the source code is open, all the weights and parameters they use to train it are open, the entire dataset is open. Basically everything seems to have been open sourced. Now, according to AMD, this model outperforms existing fully open large language models, which isn't saying much because almost no AI model is truly open apart maybe from this AMD one. But I guess maybe you'll tell me if I missed something. It looks like everything is truly open source, but maybe they kept something hidden somewhere. Instella as a model uses ROCm as its compute stack, so the technology that uses GPUs to accelerate training and computing is open source too. AMD said that this model is released for research purposes only. It is not intended for use cases that require, I quote, high levels of factuality, safety applications, or they also said it's not to be used for anything linked to health or medical stuff. So basically, it is an AI model that you can't really trust for mission critical stuff like all other AI models. At the very least, the model seems completely open source, which is very rare and very cool, especially coming from AMD, a company that has been really doing a lot of good work towards open source. So props to them. I checked the license. It's apparently their own Instella model license, which I parsed quickly. I couldn't find anything too weird. There is an AI use case policy that you have to follow if you build anything with that model, and it restricts illegal or harmful use cases, which some people might think is good, some people might think is bad, but in general it looks like it's a very good opening up of a AI model. I have my reserves about AI in general, but since AMD clearly states that it's really not meant to be used for anything mission critical, like no AI should be, well, I guess it's all good for me. But still on AMD, it looks like their latest GPUs aren't necessarily the ones that you want to buy right now, at least for Linux use. They released the RX 9070 and the 9070 XT, and Phoronix did their usual benchmarks to see how these cards fared, and it looks like it's not worth your money just yet. Now, first, to be fair, the Linux support seems really solid on day one. You can use the kernel 6.13, but 6.14 is where it's really going to be at, and that's what Phoronix used for their tests. The current latest stable version of Mesa, which is 25.0, also has the necessary bits to make that card work, and the Linux firmware proprietary blobs have what is needed as well, so you don't need to compile a lot of stuff or to run an absolutely bleeding edge distro to make those cards run. Although Phoronix did use Mesa 25.1 compiled from Git and the latest 6.14 kernel also from Git. In general, they note that the card performs adequately, but they still leave some performance on the table for now, even with all this latest stack. The 9070 performs a bit under an RX 7900, and the XT variant, the 9070 XT, performs about on par with a 4070 Ti Super from Nvidia. That's not bad, but it's probably not where it should be. The power consumption is also higher on the new 9070 XT than on a 7900 XTX, which is not good because the XTX is more powerful, delivers better result, and so definitely the 9070 XT should not use more power for less performance. There is obviously some work left to be done on the driver's side of things. Now, still, if you compare it for the price, the 9070 XT costs $600 compared to the $900 the 7900 XT cost when it released, and those two cards seem apparently matched in terms of performance for now. So I guess in terms of pure FPS per dollar, it is not a bad investment to buy those new AMD cards, and driver updates should make those perform much better in the future. Still, it shows that we're really not there yet on bleeding edge hardware or brand new hardware. I know it's a use case that not everybody will run into, not everyone rushes out to buy a brand new, just released GPU to run Linux gaming. That's not how things go. But it does show the limits of the current Linux driver model, Mesa model, but most specifically distro packaging model, because even with those drivers really ready in 6.14 and Mesa 25.1 that should come relatively soon, you might have to wait for months before your distro actually gives you those updates and thus actually gives you the support for this kind of card. And it's kind of a paradox, because if you follow the open source development model and process just like AMD does, they just interact really well with the community, with the Linux kernel and with Mesa, you are at a disadvantage compared to something like Nvidia. They just released their own drivers as a separate module, and this allows them to have much better day one support for their cards than AMD actually does. So if you follow the rules, you're actually coming in last in terms of day one support, which is definitely not how things should be. Now, there's good news for GNOME and Wayland users. The Global Shortcuts portal is now added to GNOME's desktop portals, meaning applications that need to have desktop-wide keyboard shortcuts that work even when the app is invisible, minimized, or not currently focused. Well, these apps will be able to do so. Users can add, edit, or revoke these shortcuts through the system settings as well. So apps like OBS that you generally just start running and then you minimize it to the tray, or the Orca screen reader, plenty of launchers and other apps make use of those shortcuts. And Wayland, before this specific portal, didn't allow this behavior because, well, you had it on X11, but that's because X11 basically lets any app be a keylogger, and Wayland did not want to have that gigantic security flaw. But this means that this portal was not necessarily super easy to implement, and now GNOME has it. Other cool stuff GNOME is adding in GNOME 48 includes the cursor shape protocol, which lets cursor themes work as they are supposed to work. The entire protocol is designed so mouse cursors can be rendered similarly on different compositors, so it's easier to actually design a cursor theme and to scale that cursor properly on any app. That's in addition to the color management protocol now being merged in the latest Mutter release candidate for GNOME 48, and there's also the already announced triple buffering support that finally made its way to upstream GNOME. It's really nice to see all of these improvements finally happen and land not just on KDE, because as far as I know KDE already had all of that support, but now in GNOME too, because now the two major Linux desktops actually do have really good Wayland support. I don't really know what's still missing for Wayland to really be the default for everyone, because when you have global keyboard shortcuts, when you have screen sharing implemented, now it's on the apps to follow that protocol, but the protocol is here, you have HDR, you've got good mouse cursors, I don't really know what's missing still. Anyway, GNOME 48 should land, I think it's on the 19th of this month, so obviously you can expect a dedicated video about this. Now, despite all the current Mozilla-related stuff, they are cracking on with Firefox, and version 136 was released with some sizable improvements. It comes with vertical tabs, which is sure to please a lot of users, because if we're honest, our screens are wider than they are tall, and so it makes good sense to place tabs on the left or the right of the browser, even though I am an old person and I do like my tabs on top, even though it makes less sense to have them there. Now, to enable those vertical tabs, all you have to do is right-click in the toolbar and select Turn on Vertical Tabs. The tabs will then be placed in a sidebar on the left, and the browser will move to a header bar style app with the toolbar in line with window controls, which will probably make that browser look more at home in GNOME after that change. By default, they will only show the favicons for the websites, but you can hover over those favicons to show the thumbnail preview and a close button, and you obviously have a little toggle in the toolbar to always expand these tabs so you can read their names and you can resize that sidebar as well. The already existing Firefox sidebar also was redesigned in the process. It's now integrated into the tab sidebar if you enable that feature, and you'll get icons at the bottom of that bar itself. You can disable those icons in the browser layout options. Firefox also now supports video hardware decoding on AMD hardware by default, provided your distro has access to the Mesa drivers 24.2, which should be most distributions. And so you should gain a lot of battery life if you have an AMD-based computer and you use that for YouTube, for example. Thunderbird also got a big update, now letting you automatically adapt the messages to dark mode, meaning you will no longer have to suffer blindingly white emails when you're using your computer as our Tux Penguin God intended, which is with dark mode turned on. You also get a new global setting to control how message threading and sorting works for all your folders, instead of having to do so for each of the folders, and there are tons of bug fixes as well. The Thunderbird for Android app is also getting some work done to better support multiple accounts. There are some nice looking mock-ups to test how things could look, and they've started looking for a software engineer to hire to work on the iOS client as well. They plan to have a first alpha available to test by the end of 2025. Now, I didn't make it a secret that I do have a lot of issues with Mozilla as it is right now. I've started using them ever since I started using the internet, basically. Firefox was my first browser after I used IE6 for like 10 minutes. I looked for something else and I moved to Firefox immediately. But for the past 10 years, they've done so much BS and weird stuff that it just eroded my trust into the entity as a whole. And so that's why I will not use their products exactly. I will probably just rely on forks of those that don't really depend on the Mozilla terms of service or anything that Mozilla might add later to their privacy policy or terms of service. But at the very least, no matter what I feel about Mozilla, it looks like Firefox and Thunderbird are still getting better. They're still solid browsers. The problem is with Mozilla, not with what they're building, because what they're building is actually getting better and better. So hopefully they can keep that trend going. They can really repair that relationship with a lot of people in the community who are really disillusioned with Mozilla right now, and that comes with building better products. That's what everyone has been asking for the past like 10 years. Just make better stuff. Don't make add-ons, don't make alternatives, don't make additional stuff. Just make the stuff we like from you better. That's what people want, and it looks like that's what they're starting to do. So that's nice. Also, I guess I lumped in Thunderbird in there, but they are really more of an independent thing. They are built by a subsidiary of Mozilla, but they are really more independent than Firefox in how they operate and how they're funded. Now, good news for the freedesktop.org project, they have found a new home to host all of their code, or at least all of the code from all the projects that they manage, among which are Mesa, X.org, the Wayland protocols, and a lot more. They used to have sponsored hosting from Equinix, which apparently was a very generous deal. I think it was $20,000 worth per month, but this unfortunately stopped when Equinix shut down their bare metal hosting solution, and so freedesktop.org had to find another solution. They announced they would move to Hetzner as the hosting company instead, and Fastly for their CDN, their content distribution network. The migration will happen soon, and so there will be at least a week's downtime to handle all of that. There likely won't be any code pushed to any of these projects, the Wayland protocols, X.org, even though there's literally nothing pushed to X.org anymore that isn't X-Wayland, or the Mesa drivers. For a while, nothing will happen. It will start on March the 16th. It is a necessary process. I am glad they found a new home that quickly. I don't know if the hosting is sponsored by Hetzner or Fastly, or if they managed to find a way to pay for that, or if it's another company fronting the cost. They didn't necessarily talk about this, but they mentioned receiving a lot of generous offers, so I would expect all of this hosting to be sponsored by the hosting companies themselves. I guess we'll know more as time goes on, but that's great. It means one less threat, potentially, to a crucial part of the Linux desktop ecosystem. Now, in a pretty unexpected move last week, EA, one of the most hated gaming companies for very good reason, released the source code for Command & Conquer. The entire source code for the original Command & Conquer, for Red Alert, for Command & Conquer Renegade, and for Generals and its extension 0 Hour, everything is released under the GPL, or will be very soon. It should already be out by the time you're listening to this. It will also add Steam Workshop support to add mods into these games and to let people add custom maps, and this workshop support is also added to a lot of other Command & Conquer games, even some that don't have their source code released yet, or maybe will never have their source code released, we don't know yet. The mission editors and the world builder tools have received updates, so everything works well. Users can publish their maps to the Steam Workshop easily, and a modding pack will also be released to the community later. And this is pretty awesome. If you played one of these games like I did when you were a kid, well, chances are you're gonna be able to re-access those games later. Chances are people are going to be able to fork them, modify them, enrich them, maybe add new factions, new playable campaigns, a lot of stuff. That's gonna be really interesting. I'm especially looking at Command & Conquer Generals because I have really fond memories of this game, playing it at a cyber cafe near my house when I was I guess in high school, and it was really cool. So hopefully people do something cool with that, and I can resume playing this game that I sank a lot of time into when I was younger. Also, it looks like it's all GPL, so it's not like it's a EA public license or whatever. It's like the good old GPL, so no weird licensing problems there, which is cool. Still some good news on Linux gaming. Path of Exile 2 just sent a good signal that they wanted to support Linux. In a previous patch, some Linux users started seeing a scary warning telling them that cheating isn't allowed, this is their only warning, continued use of the game might terminate their account, presumably because the game detected Proton or Wine as a cheating tool. This was fixed very quickly with a specific message in the patch notes informing users that this message was an error, which also implicitly means Linux is a platform that the devs want to support. And it's always nice to finally report some good stuff on Linux gaming, because it seems like for the past months we've only had pretty bad news on games not working, on studios deciding to drop anti-cheat support for Linux, studios actually saying that dropping anti-cheat support on Linux really solved their cheating problem. So for once, we have some good news here and I like it. And with that, this is the end of this episode. I'll leave you with this message from our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. So you probably know about Tuxedo by now if you're a regular listener of this show or a regular enjoyer of the YouTube channel. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed. That's the entire point. You buy something and it's gonna work with Linux because all the hardware has been picked specifically to run well with Linux. I only use Tuxedo Computers to do everything these days. all of my work, all of these podcast episodes, all of my videos are done on one of their laptops. It's an Infinity Book Pro 16, and all my gaming needs are, well, served by one of their Tuxedo Cubes, which is a small to medium form factor PC. So if you need a new computer and you want to support a company that actually contributes to Linux, click the link in the description and check out Tuxedo Computers. Anyway, thank you all for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. There are all the usual YouTube buttons. If you really enjoyed the video, there are plenty of links in the description to support the channel as well, and you will get some pretty nice perks for the price in the process. And in the meantime, I guess you'll see me in the next video. Bye!